Could you believe that Europe's most powerful economy wasn't built on engineering brilliance alone, not on discipline, not even on efficiency, but on something far more fragile? What if I told you that the country we associate with precision, stability, and industrial dominance quietly bet its entire future on one assumption, that energy would always be cheap, always available, and never political? Germany doesn't look like a country with weaknesses. Its trains run on time. Well, mostly, its factories are legendary. Its exports dominate global markets. And its economic reputation feels almost unbreakable. Almost, because beneath the polished image of German efficiency lies a story few people talk about. A story of invisible dependencies, of quiet policy shortcuts, of risks hidden so deep inside the system that even experts stop noticing them. This is not a story about sudden collapse. There was no explosion, no dramatic crash. Instead, it's a story about something far more dangerous, an advantage so reliable, so consistent, so profitable that Germany stopped questioning it altogether. Until one day, the power became expensive, the supply became uncertain, and the economic engine that drove Europe began to make unfamiliar noises. In this video, we're going to peel back Germany's economic image layer by layer. We'll follow the power lines into its factories, trace policy decisions that once looked brilliant, and uncover contradictions hiding behind record exports and industrial pride. And if at any point you start thinking, wait, how did no one see this coming? Don't worry, you're not alone. Oh, and before we dive in, do me a small favor. Like and subscribe. Not because YouTube needs it, but because even Germany learned a hard way that ignoring small systems can cause very big problems later. Now, let's talk about the invisible advantage Germany built everything on. Germany's economic power never announced itself loudly. It didn't arrive with slogans or grand speeches. It arrived quietly, through cables, pipelines, and power stations. For decades, Germany's factories ran with a confidence most nations couldn't afford. Steel mills glowed through the night. Chemical plants never slept. Assembly lines moved with mechanical calm, minute after minute, year after year. To the outside world, this looked like discipline, efficiency, engineering perfection. But behind every perfectly timed production cycle was something far less glamorous. Energy, cheap energy, reliable energy. Energy so abundant that German industry stopped thinking about it altogether. This was the invisible advantage, the one nobody bragged about because it felt permanent. When energy is predictable, planning becomes easy. When planning is easy, scale becomes possible. And when scale becomes possible, dominance follows. German companies didn't just make things better, they made them cheaper at scale. Longer production runs meant lower cost per unit. Continuous processes meant fewer shutdowns, fewer losses, fewer surprises. Entire industrial ecosystems formed around the assumption that power would always be there, always affordable, always flowing. And for a long time, that assumption was correct. Energy costs stayed low. Supply stayed stable. Competitors elsewhere faced volatility, outages, or political gridlock. Germany didn't. Its economy became a machine tuned to uninterrupted power. Smooth, efficient, and unforgiving to anyone who couldn't match it. The danger wasn't ignorance. The danger was comfort. Because once an advantage becomes routine, it disappears from scrutiny. Policymakers stopped asking hard questions. Industries stopped preparing for alternatives. Energy faded into the background, not as a strategic pillar, but as a given. And when something feels permanent, backups feel unnecessary. Germany didn't just build factories on cheap energy. It built confidence, policy, and long-term investment decisions on it. Universities trained engineers for energy-intensive industries. Regions specialized. Supply chains hardened around this model. It all worked perfectly, which is exactly why no one noticed the trap. Because when energy becomes invisible, dependence becomes total. And Germany had quietly made itself one of the most energy-dependent industrial economies on Earth, without ever calling it that. By the time anyone began to ask what would happen if the power stopped being cheap, the system was already locked in. And the next chapter of Germany's story would begin not in a factory, but in a pipeline, Germany's energy advantage didn't appear by accident. It was engineered. And at the center of that engineering was a decision that once looked brilliantly pragmatic: importing massive volumes of natural gas from Russia. On paper, it was perfect. Russia had gas. Germany needed energy. Pipelines would connect the two. Long-term contracts with smooth prices. Politics, leaders believed, would take a back seat to economics. Interdependence would create stability. Everyone would win. For years, it did. Russian gas flowed steadily into German power plants and industrial furnaces. It was cheaper than alternatives, cleaner than coal, reliable enough to plan decades ahead. Utilities stabilized prices. Industry expanded. Consumers enjoyed affordable heating. It felt less like a risk and more like a shortcut to efficiency. But shortcuts have a habit of skipping safety checks. With each new pipeline, Germany optimized its system further. Nuclear plants were phased out. Coal declined. Domestic energy production shrank. Backup options were delayed. Why maintain redundancy when the system works flawlessly? Germany wasn't reckless. It was logical. But logic without resilience is fragile. The deeper Germany went, the harder it became to reverse course. Energy policies stopped being flexible and became structural. Factories were designed around gas. Chemical processes depended on it not just as fuel, but as a raw material. Entire regions became functionally tied to uninterrupted supply. Warnings came, quietly at first. Concerns about geopolitics, about over-reliance, about concentration risk. They were dismissed because the gas kept flowing. And when something works year after year, doubt feels irrational. But history doesn't care about comfort. By tying its industrial heartbeat to a single external supplier, Germany wasn't just buying cheap energy. It was outsourcing leverage. It was assuming that economics would always outweigh politics. That assumption would hold until it didn't. And when it broke, it wouldn't break gently. Because once you remove backups from a system, failure doesn't arrive as inconvenience. It arrives as shock. And Germany was about to discover how expensive efficiency becomes when the shortcut disappears. If energy was Germany's foundation, industry was its crown jewel. This wasn't light manufacturing. This was heavy, complex, energy-hungry production, the kind most countries struggle to sustain. Chemicals, steel, glass, automobiles, machinery, industries where power isn't optional and interruptions aren't forgiven. Take chemicals. Germany's chemical giants didn't just use gas to generate electricity. Gas was part of the process itself. No gas meant no reactions. No reactions meant no products. No products meant no economy. Steel required relentless heat. Glass furnaces couldn't be turned off without catastrophic damage. Automotive supply chains ran with surgical timing, synchronized across hundreds of suppliers. The system was brutally efficient and brutally exposed. As long as energy stayed cheap, Germany could host industries others couldn't afford. That advantage translated into exports, jobs, tax revenue, and geopolitical influence. Entire cities were built around these plants. Generations worked in them. But energy-intensive industries have one fatal weakness. They cannot absorb price shocks. When energy costs rise slightly, margins disappear. When they rise sharply, competitiveness collapses. Suddenly, factories that once dominated global markets look overpriced compared to rivals in the US, China, or energy-rich regions elsewhere. For years, this risk lived in spreadsheets as a hypothetical. Then the numbers changed. Energy prices surged. Contract expired. Assumptions failed. Executives began holding emergency meetings that sounded eerily similar across industries. Is this temporary? Can we absorb this? Do we pass it on to customers? Do we cut production? Some plants slowed. Others paused. The language stayed cautious. Maintenance, adjustments, optimization. But behind closed doors, a far more dangerous question was being asked. What if this is permanent? Because if cheap energy was gone, Germany wouldn't just lose a cost advantage. It would lose the very industries that made it Germany. When the shock arrived, it didn't come with a warning label. Energy prices didn't rise gradually. They spiked. Supply assumptions collapsed almost overnight. What had once been stable enough to plan years ahead suddenly required weekly crisis meetings. Factories stare at cost models that no longer made sense. Some reduced output. Others shut down entire lines. A few closed altogether, not because demand vanished, but because producing no longer made economic sense. Households noticed heating bills first. Industry felt it deeper. Profit margins flipped negative. Contracts became liabilities. Germany's most reliable economic engine began misfiring. Governments reacted fast. Subsidies, price caps, emergency support. Billions were deployed to buy time. But time is not a solution. Subsidies can delay reality. They can't erase it. For the first time in decades, Germany's promised stability, predictability, long-term industrial security began to wobble. Investors noticed. Competitors noticed. Workers noticed. And confidence, once shaken, spreads faster than any energy crisis. Because when energy stops being cheap, the question is no longer about power. It's about whether the entire model still works. And Germany was about to confront an answer it had spent years avoiding. At first, no one used the word. Governments don't like it. Industries fear it. Economists argue about it. So Germany reached for safer language. Adjustment, transformation, temporary restructuring. But behind the careful phrasing, a more unsettling idea was circulating quietly through boardrooms and ministries alike. Deindustrialization, not the dramatic kind. No mass shutdowns. No rusted skylines overnight. This was slower, subtler, and far more dangerous. Germany wasn't losing factories in the present. It was losing them in the future. New investments were postponed. Expansion plans were shelved. Global firms quietly redirected capital to places where energy was cheaper and policies felt more predictable. Maintenance budgets were trimmed. Apprenticeships shrank. Research projects were delayed. None of this made headlines, but it changed the trajectory. Industrial economies don't collapse suddenly. They erode. Supplier networks thin out. Skilled workers leave. Once tightly integrated clusters begin to loosen, piece by piece. And Germany's greatest strength had always been its ecosystem. Not individual factories, but the dense web of suppliers, engineers, logistics firms, and research institutions that made everything work. That web began to fray. Executives spoke more openly about location risk. A phrase that had once been reserved for unstable regions now appeared in presentations about Germany. The unthinkable had become discussable. Could Germany still guarantee long-term competitiveness? Could it still promise predictable costs? Could it still offer the stability global capital demands? For the first time in generations, the answers weren't automatic. And when doubt enters an economy built on confidence, it doesn't stay small. It compounds. Because factories can survive bad years. They cannot survive uncertain decades. Germany had built its industrial identity on permanence, on the idea that once a factory was built, it stayed. That assumption was now under pressure. And beneath the polite language of transition lay a reality no one wanted to say out loud. If investment doesn't return, decline doesn't announce itself. It just continues. Germany didn't ignore the future. In fact, it tried to lead it. Long before the crisis, Germany committed to an ambitious energy transition. Renewable power would replace fossil fuels. Wind and solar would power industry. The country would decarbonize responsibly, gradually, affordably. That was the plan. But plans don't survive shocks. The energy crisis didn't cancel the transition. It forced it to accelerate before the system was ready. Renewables expanded rapidly. Wind turbines rose. Solar panels spread across rooftops and fields. But industrial economies don't run on averages. They run on certainty. And renewable energy, powerful as it is intermittent. The wind doesn't always blow. The sun doesn't always shine. And factories don't pause politely when the weather changes. Germany needed storage, grid upgrades, backup capacity, flexible demand systems. All of it required time, money, and political patience. Instead, the transition arrived under pressure. Energy prices stayed volatile. Public support wavered. Industry grew frustrated. What had once been a shared national vision turned into a political battlefield. Some argued the transition was too slow. Others argued it was too fast. Everyone agreed it was expensive, yet there was no return to the old model. Cheap gas was gone. Nuclear was politically closed. Coal was incompatible with climate goals. Germany was running forward, not because it was ready, but because there was nowhere else to go. And that made the gamble riskier. Because transforming an energy system is hard. Transforming it while trying to save an industrial economy is harder. Germany wasn't failing to change. It was being forced to change without a safety net, and the rest of the world was watching closely. Economic weakness is rarely hidden for long. As Germany struggled with cost and uncertainty, its competitors moved quickly and strategically. The United States rolled out massive industrial subsidies, cheap energy, tax incentives, predictable policy. Factories that once would have been built in Germany now found new homes across the Atlantic. Asia doubled down on scale. China absorbed shocks with state support and long-term planning. Energy-rich regions marketed stability, something Germany could no longer guarantee. Global capital is not sentimental. It goes where the numbers make sense. And for the first time in decades, Germany was no longer the obvious choice. What once felt like dominance now felt like defense. Instead of attracting investment effortlessly, Germany found itself competing aggressively just to hold on. Export markets grew tougher. Supply chains diversified away. The assumption that Germany would always be Europe's industrial anchor weakened. And in a global economy, hesitation is punished. Germany still had advantages: skills, infrastructure, reputation. But those advantages were no longer unchallenged. They had to be defended, justified, subsidized. The shift was subtle, but profound. Germany had gone from setting the pace to reacting to it. And as the world adjusted to a new energy reality, one question hovered uncomfortably in the background. Was this a temporary stumble, or the beginning of a permanent reordering? Because when rivals smell vulnerability, they don't wait, they move. And Germany's next chapter would determine whether it could move faster than the forces now reshaping the global economy. Economic pressure never stays confined to factories and balance sheets. Eventually, it spills into kitchens, train platforms, and town halls. In Germany, the energy shock began as a technical problem. Prices, supply, contracts. But as costs stayed high and uncertainty lingered, something deeper started to shift. Public confidence. Workers who had grown up believing industrial jobs were permanent began hearing unfamiliar words: restructuring, relocation, competitiveness reviews. Small towns built around single employers felt exposed. Apprentices wondered whether the careers they were training for would still exist by the time they graduated. Germany's post-war social contract had always been clear: stability in exchange for productivity, prosperity in exchange for restraint. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. Now that contract felt strained. Rising energy bills collided with stagnant wages. Inflation quietly eroded purchasing power. The idea that Germany was immune to the anxieties facing other countries became harder to maintain. Political frustration followed, not in a single direction, but in many. Some blamed environmental policy. Others blamed past energy decisions. Some blamed globalization. Others blamed Europe. The consensus that once defined German economic governance began to fracture. This wasn't chaos. It was unease. And unease is dangerous because it spreads silently. It changes how people vote, how they spend, how they trust institutions. Economic uncertainty has a way of turning technical debates into emotional ones. Suddenly, energy policy wasn't about kilowatt hours. It was about identity, fairness, and the future. Germany had navigated crises before, but this one felt different. It wasn't external. It was structural. And structural stress reshaped society slowly. Then all at once, Germany now stands at a crossroads it didn't plan to reach so soon. One path leads forward, but it's steep. It demands massive investment in grids, storage, education, and new industries. It requires letting go of parts of the old industrial identity while inventing a new one in real time. This path promises resilience over efficiency, flexibility over perfection, fewer guarantees, but more options. The other path looks easier, at least at first. Gradual retreat, accepting slower growth, losing some industries, remaining wealthy but less influential, stable but smaller, no collapse, no drama, just quiet decline. History shows that great economies rarely choose retreat consciously. They drift into it, while hoping things will improve on their own. Germany still has choices: skilled labor, engineering depth, institutional strength. But choice requires speed, and speed is something consensus-driven systems struggle with. The race is no longer about being the most efficient producer. It's about being the most adaptable. Can Germany build an energy system that supports industry without cheap fossil fuels? Can it compete globally while costs remain higher? Can it reinvent its industrial base without breaking its social contract? None of these questions have easy answers. But avoiding them is no longer an option, because the future isn't waiting. Germany didn't fail because it was careless. It failed because it trusted permanence. For decades, cheap energy felt like a law of nature, something as reliable as gravity. It built factories, careers, and confidence on that belief. But economic miracles don't fade with explosions. They fade when assumptions go unchallenged for too long. Today, the lesson is written everywhere. In power lines stretched across the countryside, in factories reconsidering their future, in policy debates that suddenly sound urgent. Dependence doesn't look dangerous while it works. It only reveals itself when it breaks. Germany's story is not finished. It may yet reinvent itself and succeed. But whatever comes next will be shaped by a hard truth learned late. Efficiency without resilience is fragile. Optimization without backup is risky. And advantages you stop noticing are often the ones that matter most. What Germany becomes now will determine not just its own future, but Europe's. Because when the engine of a continent slows, the vibration is felt everywhere. And the most important question remains unanswered. Is Germany adapting fast enough, or is a quiet unraveling only just